Happy Wednesday, everyone. All right, welcome to, or I guess good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're calling from, maybe even good evening. Welcome to Product versus Safe. I am joined today by two amazing people, two friends, two coworkers, or former coworkers. So my name is Joe Ghali. I'm a principal consultant and trainer at the 280 Group. I will be primarily playing the role of MC, but I will be jumping in on a couple of slides. Joining me today are Elad Simon. He is the CEO and co-founder of Craft.io, as well as my good friend and former coworker, partner in crime, Rosana Johnson, who is an enterprise transformation strategic advisor with Scaled Agile. For those wondering about the 280 Group, we are an outcome-driven product management consulting and partnership organization. We transform product management teams and organizations into better versions of themselves with coaching, training, and consulting from our leading experts. As the slide says, we live our core values. We are focused on outcomes. We are truth tellers, and we believe in one team. And these are, when we talk about product management, we talk about some of the concepts of SAFE, you will see some consistency there in terms of how we take our own values and apply them when we partner up with organizations. Craft.io is an end-to-end product management platform, empowering product teams to build great products with confidence. All right, let's get to the nitty-gritty. So during the webinar, I would like to encourage all of you to please use the chat function within this tool to ask our panelists questions. We will obviously get to as many of them as we can during the next hour. What we are unable to answer, we will definitely follow up with either a video or blog post. And if you want to know, you're probably going to ask the question, we are 100% going to record this webinar so that you can rewatch it over and over again and just be amazed with the awesomeness that is this particular webinar.
Or if you struggle falling asleep, and
or so if you're having trouble, if you have trouble falling asleep, listening to my voice will definitely be that therapeutic answer to helping you there. Lastly, I want to encourage you. Oh, there's a question in the chat, and it says, should you use the chat or Q&A panel? You know what? Let's use the Q&A panel. I think that would be better for the.
I think the only challenge with the Q&A is that then people can't see other people can't see the questions, I think.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point, Elad. Let's go ahead and use chat. I think chat is good. Let's make it so that everyone can see it. That's a fair point.
We want to be transparent.
What happens when you have too much coffee in the day? Like, you just want to race through things. Okay, before we get to the agenda, I want to encourage everyone on this call to join the LinkedIn groups for Craft.io, 280 Group, and Scaled Agile. In those groups, you're going to find one of us posting, sharing, documenting, leveraging our awesomeness. So please follow us on LinkedIn and our organizations. Okay, so we're talking about the agenda. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a quick poll question, but kind of what I want to do is I want to get an understanding of SAFE, right? Known as Scaled Agile. And so that's why we have Ro here. I'm going to talk about the role of product management. And then where we want to spend a good amount of time is just talking about the intersection. Where are there potential perceived challenges and conflicts? And I want to say perceived, right? Because I think what we're going to find is the question is, how do we get them to coexist? Can they coexist? And teaser, they can and they should. Then we're going to take up and end with some more Q&A and wrap up. We'll share some amazing offers and opportunities for everyone who has given us time today to join our webinar. But you know what? We want to know a little bit about you. So let's start off with a poll question so that we can better understand our audience. So Jerry, if you could, please start up the poll. We got 169 participants. I love it. All right. So Elad and Ro, can you see?
Yes.
How it's looking? All right.
I love it.
It's like a horse race.
I know.
It's like I got one in the race. I got one in the race. I got two, three threes coming up. All right. Let's see, I got a lot of product leaders. We got a lot of combos. All right, this is good.
I think Ro was the one who anticipated there's going to be a lot of combinations. If you remember,
Yes,
Joe.
Absolutely.
exactly.
Absolutely.
we
So
had-
you have to be in multiple camps. You can't be in one camp. You have to really
Exactly.
absorb it all.
Or in the camp, you just don't know which camp you are.
Which is very
Yeah.
fair. It can happen. That can
I know.
definitely happen. All right, we have everyone just a few more seconds here. So it looks like we have a lot of product leaders, product managers on the call, followed by like what Ro had correctly predicted, which was a combination, right? If I'm going to play the role of coach and product manager, or scrum master and product manager, which that's a different discussion for a different day.
All right, I
All
think
right.
we have a let's show it. Let's show it.
Yeah,
Joe.
let's go ahead and end it. Share it. Oh,
There you go.
all right. So about half are product managers, and about a third are a combination of the ones above it. Okay. But we do a sprinkling of some safe practitioners, scrum masters, and product owners. Excellent. All right. Without further ado, let's get started. Ro, tell us a little bit about safe.
Cool. So I still see your poll box. Should you stop sharing? You want me to stop sharing? Your call.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh. I still see it, but I'll just get rid of it. So let's just talk a little bit. So, when we talk about product management and we talk about the Scaled Agile framework, we really are thinking about it's really a unified. So, no secret, I'm sorry to burst the bubble. The first 9 minutes of this wonderful opportunity for us to engage as one community. It's really a unified approach. Really, it's delivering value to our customers and optimizing that value across the organization. And it takes everything that we do across the organization in order to enable that, right? So we talk about customer centricity. We talk about the value that we're delivering to our customers through prioritized work. So making sure that we're sequencing the work and we're prioritizing the work to the needs of the customer, and making sure that we are doing that in continuous feedback loops. So it enables us to really have that fast feedback from our customers continuously to make sure that we're building the right thing over time, and that at the time where the right thing is not being built, that we can stop, learn from our feedback from our customers, and come back and iterate on the right things that we need to do in order to continue that value delivery to our customers. We do that through collaboration, right? So we have cross-functional teams that define, build, test, and deploy wonderful, awesome things. But it's all about the customer value that we see and the customer's needs that we need to be able to answer to. So the collaboration of cross-functional teams, the way we build agile teams, is the success of that value delivery that we're doing for our customer. It's the fostering culture of innovation that also keeps us from delivering awesome technology products, but not necessarily customer value driven products, right? So when we talk about the innovation aspect, we talk about the market, making sure that we're sensing the market. So that lean startup cycles, there's so many books about that talk about that, but that lean startup cycle that Scaled Agile framework is known for is to make sure that we can pivot or persevere with regards to what the customer needs are, and making sure that we have that lean startup cycle in mind when we think about the customer needs. So we don't continue to deliver something if it's not delivering the value of the customer, and we stop when we deliver that value. And adaptability, changing markets. I think Joe and I worked in an organization, in a consumer goods organization, where we were producing these awesome paper products, but at the end of the day, when COVID hit, we had to be able to decide on what products we were going to sell. And it was great that we had all these wonderful manufacturing line products, but if the manufacturing line stopped, what were we going to sell? So we had to retreat and think about, how do we cut this big piece of manufacturing piece of paper into something that we can use in doctor offices, that we can use in hospitals, that we can use in stores. So really is to innovate and adapt the needs of the market based on what the customer needs are, right? So all those things. And then the alignment. I mean, in order for us to be able to deliver something, we have to have really true mission, vision, strategy, and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So without understanding the purpose of what we're trying to achieve, the who we're trying to do it for, and the what that we're going to deliver, and prioritizing that work, again, between business and IT coming together to deliver that customer-centric product, it's really hard. So you can have some really good, awesome teams that can define, build, and deploy it, individually, but it's the harmonization and the alignment and the cadence that brings those things together. And then let's not forget, because I think one of the things that we forget when we talk about Scaled Agile and we talk about any framework at all, but particularly in the Scaled Agile framework, we're bringing the lean component and we're bringing the agile component into one. So this is where my secret sauce is, right? So I used to do black belt optimization lean work back in my days of working at, I worked for IBM for 21 years. We did a lot of lean optimization work, but we forgot the fact that we needed to align people, build synchronization and alignment into our system. So we had some really great, awesome things that we were doing to optimize and leanify our organization, but we didn't have really good cross-functional teams that could deliver on those. So we have to bring the lean and agile component into everything we do. So this is what SAFE is all about. It's really to achieve that business agility through the 7 core competencies that you see here. So customer is in the center of everything that we do. So the business agility component, in order to achieve that business agility, we take into consideration these 7 core competencies, from really constructing some really good big system solution delivery to making sure that we're product centric around customer centricity and design thinking about the continuous flow of that value that we're delivering through the cadences and the release on demand, and then talking about how do we create some really good teams that can define, build, test, and deploy with quality in mind, and making sure that we're organized around values so we're not pitching balls across the organization and causing bottlenecks and causing stop and go. And then the lean leadership component of all those things, the continuous learning culture, organizational agility, because we continuously have to continue to build that up. It's not a one and done kind of scenario. And then again, connecting back to what are the products as an organization that we are trying to deliver to our customer? What is that product? I've worked in many organizations, and I've also now done a lot of consulting in organizations as part of my strategic advisor work. The first thing that we ask is, what are the products that you guys have? And it'd be very interesting to see the answers that we get. Number one, there's not a lot of alignment around what the products are, the why, the how, and the what, and ultimately the purpose and the mission and vision that we're trying to achieve. So I always tell people, and not that I do this as a gimmick, but I always have my mission and vision of Scaled Agile here on my computer, right? I have it in 2 stickies for that reason. And the reason why is because I look at everything that I do on a day-to-day basis with regards to how it aligns to my mission and vision. If it doesn't align, I have to question whether that work goes into my opportunities in order to do so. So the benefits of SAFE is really that customer that customer alignment, making sure that our customers are happy. We have better engaged customers, which means that we have better engaged employees because they're organized around value and they can work without having to stop and go and create complexity. The enhanced adaptability, I know, Joe, you're going to talk about this, but really that adaptability to change. You can't just do it one way. There has to be, it's not a one size fit all framework, and that's not what that's about. It's really that collaboration, that communication, the faster time to market, but the value delivery that we deliver to our customers with quality in mind, and in a sense, increasing productivity. Going back to the top that says we're increasing our customer satisfaction through the ways we're working, increasing what we deliver to them and the productivity and the quality that we deliver to them. So this is what SAFE is all about when you talk about these things. It's not a one size fit all model. And it works quite beautifully with the agile product delivery as it's one of our core competencies in order to produce business agility across the enterprise. So and it takes everybody.
Yeah. So real quick, there's a couple of questions in here I want to get to before
Absolutely.
we talk about product management. Yeah. So one of the questions has to do with, the perception that SAFE is very waterfall. As someone who is very passionate about SAFE, real quick, I just want to be, quick answers on some of these. What's your response to how do you overcome that perception about that with SAFE?
I think the perception with Scaled Agile being very waterfall is depending on how you bring it into your organization. I think the challenges that we face is that people think that they take the framework and they apply it into organization, and that framework is going to work for them based on what Scaled Agile framework is telling you to do. However, that's why you have these wonderful people that are called enterprise agile coaches, or you call them agile coaches, team coaches, good scrum masters, that really talk about being thoughtful around what you bring in, not a one size fits all framework, but bringing the right things into the organization that makes sense at the right time. and the iterative. So when we talk about the agile product delivery piece, we talk about the team and technical component. We're constantly thinking about the iterative approach on how we do things. And I think I saw a question, there's this PI, it's a planning increment or
plan.
I don't know. Yeah, it's planning increment, correct.
Yeah, that's what
or
I meant.
Planning, or I should say planning interval, I should say, because it changed
Yeah.
to 6.0. So thanks, Chris.
Yep.
I see you on the chat. So really, it can be further away from a waterfall scenario, but I'd like to say that, you know, not everything necessarily has to be agile, but you can adopt the right things from an agile perspective in order to produce those outcomes. I think the challenge is that sometimes organizations really don't begin with the change component of doing agile ways of working. And so they shift people from a waterfall environment and don't tell them the why as to why they're moving away from waterfall into agile. Why do we want to use agile in our organization? So preparing people for change and being able to really orchestrate that to why do I need to be engaged here? What's my role and responsibility in their organization as we're evolving to this new ways of working?
Yep. So let me continue. Let's talk a little bit about product management, right? There's definitely overlap. As someone that worked with Royal before, we mentioned, like she mentioned, in organizations, you know, we partner up. But let me take it from the product management coach perspective that I have as a trainer and consultant. You know, when we get in front of organizations and teams, you know, I ask them this very question, you know, what percentage of products fail? I ask everyone the question. And a lot of times they're surprised when I tell them that ballpark, we're talking 80-85% of products fail. And one of the reasons why products fail is, you know, many times we lack definition. You know, what is it that we're trying to build? We are moving further and further away from delivering value and products that really address the customer needs and wants. We lack enough market research, right? We're not looking at our competitive enough. We're not looking at what's going on outside of our organization, because ultimately, when it comes to developing products, there are many different data points we have to leverage as product leaders in order to make the decisions around what's the best thing to build, right? We jump right too quickly to the solution, and we don't have enough empathy, right? So when we talk about, you know, product person, right, as a product leader, it's how do we demonstrate that empathy? How well do we know our customers? Can we, you know, like as Rose says, one of the questions she asks are, you know, tell me about your mission and vision. Tell me about some of those things. My question is, tell me what are your customers' biggest problems? Or even I even start with, tell me who your customers are. What segments do you have? What markets do you serve? Tell me what makes those segments different, and how do your products serve those segments or those particular markets? So, you know, it can be very complementary to SAFe in the sense of, I want to make sure we understand the user. I understand where they're coming from. I want to understand the as is before I even think about the to be, right? Now, where product management, I think, has a little bit of a different spin is, you know, things like where some products fail, poor marketing, right? How do you develop that robust go-to-market plan, right? How do you formulate and build out a really good beta test program? What are some of those components? How do you bring stakeholders along? Now, I'll tell you, one of the areas we struggled in Scale, Agile has a really good ceremony called product increment planning, which Ro and I have talked about many, many times. You know, stakeholder management is some of the toughest challenges that PMs have. You know, having that regular cadence on a quarterly basis of getting in front of all your stakeholders and all your shared services and talking about where you're going to be in the next quarter and how is that going to lead to your roadmap. For me, from my perspective, it was like gold. It's probably one of my favorite SAFe ceremonies, not to mention Wisjif. I'm a big Wisjif fan, but I recognize this. There's a balance, right? As a product leader, as a product coach, there is a balance that we have to face. And I think, you know, Elad, I'd want your perspective.
Sure.
You know, when we come at it from managing products, and even Ro even said something to this effect, we have to find what works best for our organization. Yes, we have to tell people the why. Tell me, why am I doing this? So they're kind of bought into it. But we have to find what works well for our organization. You agree, disagree? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
no, so a couple of thoughts, and I have one meta thought. One is, I mean, the way I define product management, at least from my very simplistic, is really like the intersect between the technology, the strategy, and the customers. Like that's it. Like, you know, there is supposed to be a person or a set of people who are supposed to make sense from what the customers need, where the company wants to go, and what the technology is able or can deliver. You know, and like that's the job, right? So, I mean, if I think of product management as a discipline rather than as a methodology, just for a moment, I mean, there's a lot of methodologies around, but I think from a product management, you know, what is it? What do product managers end up doing? This is it. It's just like they're sitting in this intersection. They shouldn't be too technical to understand customers. They shouldn't be too marketing oriented to not be able to talk to developers. They shouldn't be ignorant to the strategy, to the competitors, etc., in order to, you know, kind of like live in a vacuum. And so that's like, you know, the way, you know, the other way of defining is like, you know, a plate spinner or whatever you want to call it, like basically somebody who can juggle all these balls in a very complex environment of building software in a, you know, super competitive, super fast, you know, etc. I think product management, unlike SAFe, by the way, has a different stance when it comes to methodologies. I think there's a lot of methodologies out there for product management, right? And I think some of them are represented by 280, some of them, and I think eventually, you know, they have a lot of common denominators, etc., between them. But at the essence is like, you know, try to make something that works for you. And I think what Ro was trying to, I think, articulate earlier, and I think this is what we see in the chat right now. In a lot of cases, SAFe is implemented in a way that is like overbearing to organization. And I mean, that's been my experience with some organizations. Again, I'm not saying that should be the case or that's like always the case for sure, but definitely something that you see in some cases.
Yeah, a lot. So yeah, I think that's the thing. I think that people come into organizations and they put scaled agile, they put SAFe on top of their traditional waterfall environment that they're currently living in, but they don't change how they're going about doing things. So they're putting something on top of the other, and people are like, it's too complex, it has too much weight. Well, you really haven't, again, taken the organizations to the change ways of working in order for them to be able to do that. And the product management place is a great example of that, right?
Yeah.
Product management stands on its own. In order for you to be able to dazzle or delight a customer, you have to really be thoughtful around how you go evolving that product. But understanding your products as an organization is one of the key things that organizations skip. And also the change management component. So I think that's the thing. Defining our products is so essential, but yet nobody does it, right? And so then they're like, well, what's the product that we're trying to build? And so
it should be more about what problem are we trying to solve for, though. I think it's even before that, Ro. It's not so much what products are we building. It's more of what are the opportunities.
Well, defining the products, right? Defining,
it'll drive to it, right? Just bits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you and I used that discussion quite a lot when we worked in the same organization is, you know, what is the problem that we're trying to solve for, and for who are we trying to solve it for, and how are we going to go about doing that? So to me, it's really thinking and understanding the journey that you're taking whatever your customer is on, and then defining those products around to suit the needs of the customer.
Yeah.
So there's a question here.
And just if I can, just to finish my thought before that. Sorry, just so I don't forget it, because it was I was amused by my own thoughts, so I'll mention it. One of the things that happened through this chat was there was probably, I don't know, maybe 15 or so questions about what is API. And there was a heated debate about what it is. And I think that's honestly, at least from my perspective, and Ro, you'll forgive me for saying that, I hope, that's one of the challenges people see with SAFe. There is a lot of terminologies and language and let's say methodology around SAFe, to the point that people forget that it's a tool to serve a purpose rather than an entity on its own. I personally, you know, before this meeting, I thought it was program increment and it's product increment, and now it's and I think
So a lot of what it used to be program increment, but then it was a planning increment. But the whole concept is definitely not a tool, right? So at the end of the day, definitely, you know, Scale Agile framework is definitely not a tool. It's a way of really, it's just like, you know, when we talk about phase gates and we talk about milestones in a waterfall environment,
Yeah,
those are words. I don't know what those words mean either. I didn't do traditional waterfall product management and,
yeah,
you know, as project management as people did. So, and the whole even project management and project management sometimes gets intertwined and
Oh,
introduced.
yeah.
So I think, yeah. So, yeah.
All right, so we got to be a little bit better here, not talking over each other. Just got a couple of things.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so
I think
there's
we're
a
very
really good
passionate about our
question.
subjects.
I'm going to ask before we go to our next poll. A question from the panelists. There was a mention of how SAFe supports lean startup. Can you expand upon that? As an example, do we bring experiments into SAFe? Wouldn't experiments lose the wish shift game against all of the priorities in the business? Trying to understand how product discovery figures into SAFe. Ro, I'll give you a minute, and then Elad, I'll let you counter. Ro, what's your response?
Okay, I don't know what the question is. Sorry, I'm trying to. Where did you pull the question from? Because I have to scroll.
Okay, so it's from Aske. So again, there was a mention of how SAFe supports lean up. How do we bring experiments, like experimentation, into the SAFe framework? Wouldn't those experiments lose the wish shift game against all other priorities in the business? We're trying to understand how
No, and
product
so
discovery
yeah,
fits into it.
yeah, so I think discovery fits into everything that we do as Scaled Agile framework, right? So when we talk about the lean startup cycle, we talk about the continuous exploration and continuous delivery of that exploration. But in order for us to understand what we want, again, the why around the products that we're trying to create for our customers, why are we doing it? We constantly are into that continuous exploration. So when we talk about the infinity loops, we're constantly going in. So the design thinking approach and the way we constantly think about how we go about discovering or exploring our next opportunity and making sure that we do just enough work to understand if it's lucrative, if it's viable, if it's the product that the customer wants and needs. And then if it's not, we stop and we go to the next thing. So the continuous exploration is something that's an underpin of everything we do it in the Scale Agile framework or in the Scale Agile ways of working, wherever way you want to call it. But no, the continuous exploration is one of the biggest things that we do. You pivot or persevere based on that. You do, that's the lean business case. That's the lean component of Scaled Agile, right? So you do just enough work to understand if it's something that we want to pursue. If it is, then we can do some more work around through different things. I don't want to call any particular words, but if you want to continue further on that particular feature, then you continue going in that direction. If it's something they're like, no, you know what, that's not where we were going, we stop right there and we move to the next thing. And the WSJF, when you talk a way to shortest job first and prioritization of work, that's based on once you have a lean business case, once you have what's in scope and out of scope of those things, then you can talk about prioritizing the work. But I think the continuous exploration component is something that comes before prioritization of work, making sure that we have enough information in order to evolve that to the next step, which is to actually go and work on it, implement it, and begin work on it.
yeah. If
Elad,
I
just
can,
real quick, anything on that?
sure. Yeah, if I can add to that, I think, and this is true, by the way, not specifically only to WSJF. There is a quote unquote bug between experimentation and prioritization frameworks in general. It could be RICE, it could be WSJF. It doesn't matter. At least on my book, it doesn't really matter. And it is eventually, I mean, the way people think about prioritization frameworks usually is quite static, as in, you know, you put a board on and you put all the, you put all the data in, and then you rank it and stack rank it by, from top to bottom, and that's your priority list. I think experimentation helps in many cases validate the numbers that you put in the table, if that makes sense. So if you want to understand what is the impact or what is the reach, you might have to do a small scale experiment and figure out how many people can this new feature actually impact. And based on that, you can iterate your next variation of the next version of a WSJF board or of a RICE board to that, right? So it's not, I wouldn't think of it as, I mean, I think what the person asking the question was trying to say is basically, if I'm running an experiment, if something is very small scale, it will never win the WSJF game. Like, it will never be big enough. And I think you need to think of experimentation as ways to solidify your attributes or your numbers within that game. And think of prioritization as an iterative game. It's not like you do it, you're done, and you're moving on with your life. No, you revisit it. After you do some experiment, you revisit it again and say, actually, now that I know more information, let me revisit my prioritization and figure out whether it makes sense now that this one is at the top and this one is second and this one at third, etc. So that's how I think of experimentation. It's like it's in the in-between of the versions of the prioritization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually really like that, because one thing that we always talk about is there are three questions. We call it the product market fit. Is it valuable? Is it viable? Is it feasible? Right? And there's a good friend of mine on this. He was on the chat and he coined the phrase tiny acts of discovery. And as product leaders, we're doing tiny acts of discovery from start to finish. We're doing tiny acts of discovery in our marketing. We're doing tiny acts of discovery as we're ideating on a potential solution. So as product leaders, I think one thing that sometimes gets lost is we never stop asking why. We never stop doing these little tiny acts of discovery so that we can make better informed decisions. And when it comes to prioritization, typically when I've used WSJIF, it's what are the big initiatives I'm going to work on? I've built out that business case, but before I even put it into my WSJIF, I have done enough experimentation to know whether or not this is something that's viable, feasible, and valuable for my customers.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ro, there was another question here, and I believe the answer to that is no, but it says, going back to Ask's question, does that mean there's only one experiment or iteration per PI? The answer is no, correct? You can do multiple experiments.
You can do multiple. It depends on how much capacity you want to dedicate to that piece of work. So I think that's where people use that. You can have multiple experience in an iteration. It just depends on the capacity of the team and what they have time. And I always, from an agile coach perspective, I always make sure that when we talk about what our people are going to do, that we're constantly thinking about how we're going to explore and innovate in that aspect. So there's not a number. It's not a one per iteration. It could be multiple. It just depends, all those things. And Joe, when you say it's feasible, it's viable, it's valuable, that's exactly what, when we talk about MVPs and we talk about the agile work, it's all about, is it feasible? Is it viable? And does it bring value to the customer? If the answer is no, then,
you need to go back.
Why are we doing it? Yeah. Why are we doing it? Right. So what's the why? Right. And so this is where I think the customer and technology coming together to deliver a feasible product, a viable product, and a valuable product.
So there's another good question here that says, if a company's initial waterfall culture does not become more agile by implementing SAFe, should it be called something different? This came from Brennan. I'm not sure how to answer that.
Yeah, so I don't think the change component is part of the SAFe. I mean, I want to be cognizant, right? So when we talked about the scaled agile framework, we talked about change, right? Being adaptable to change. So we have to prepare the organization for change. So if you read any of the Cotter books, right, we talk about, building a guiding coalition, making sure that we understand who are the key players that have influence across the organization, that can start moving in the right direction, that can change people's minds, the whole concept of the mindset, the fixed mindset and the growing mindset. So there's a lot of, we could spend a whole 2 hours talking about the change component in organizations, but really when you come in as an enterprise agile coach and you start really thinking about how we're going to evolve and do this transformation, that I think Randy put it so eloquently, that it's bigger than just one area, one product management. When you're transforming an organization, it could be a multitude of things that you're doing, right? So just think about when you're asking somebody to change the way they're working, you are changing their model, you're changing the way they've always done things, and then their career path, the development path, role clarity, right? Understanding what your role is. And somebody even said a comment around that sometimes product owners and product managers may not understand what their role and what in that minimal, viable and feasible product, they also play a role in that, obviously a big role in that piece. So I think it's preparing that organization for change. I have a sticky that I'm always looking at on my wall that says, what are the 8-step process for leading change in an organization? And I'm constantly looking at it because every time I talk to customers, well, have we done this? Have we cleared around what our purpose of doing this? Do we understand what our mission and vision of doing this? Do we have key results or objectives that we have when we talk about changing an organization? So to me, change scaled agile, product management, all those things are underpinning of each other and supporting each other in order to produce that awesome product for the customer with the employee experience and customer experience in mind.
So this is
So
what I want to
if
do.
I can,
Yeah, go ahead, Elad. I want to
so,
let you finish your thoughts.
yeah, sure. So, I mean, to jump in on that point, I think one of the things that, and again, I'm trying to read the comments from the
Me
folks
too.
on the call here, and also to read in between the lines a little bit. I think, and I think this goes into a lot of the discussion here. One of the challenges with applying a framework, whatever the framework may be, is that it brings a lot of change. And when organizations are not ready for that, it becomes overbearing for a lot of companies. And if I had, from my perspective, if I had one criticism for SAFe in that sense, it would be that. And again, by the way, I don't think it's criticism for the methodology itself. I think it's criticism for the way it's implemented in some companies that I've seen. Is that in many cases, organizations try to do the whole thing in one go, or try to bring every possible framework and every possible methodology within the framework. And I think a lot of organizations end up being, just bluntly speaking, very, very confused. And people are just like, kind of like, what is this? It becomes the most important question. Like, what is a PI? What is an art? What is it? And this is one of those things that I think, honestly, SAFe takes a lot of heat for, unjustifiably, at least in my perspective, unjustifiably, because I don't think it's to do with the framework. It's to do with how people end up implementing it and how, quote unquote, inconsiderate they are to the amount of change organization you can actually absorb. And I think this is one of those things that I think for a lot of the folks here, I mean, you can see here, there's a lot of questions, but a lot of frustrations as well and I think that's one of those things that I think people need to ask themselves, how much change can an organization actually absorb? And Roy, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but as a framework, it's a pretty, extensive framework. And so it covers, as you said, it covers a lot of topics within the world of, building software products. And so if you try to do the whole thing in one go across a big organization, it becomes, I think, in my mind, at least, very overbearing. And I think that's why we see a lot of the challenges and frustrations coming from SAFe come from that. I don't know if you agree or disagree. Would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to take I see a question there from Akshay with regards to, is there a size of the company where SAFe starts to become a good framework or not? So I'll take that question, and I'll say that, I think, again, the way I've always used SAFe in my word, and I'll say that I've been using SAFe now for many, 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 many years. It's not a one size fits all framework. You take the pieces of the framework that you want to adopt. So if you have one team, you have the capability to do that. If you have multiple teams, you have the capability to do that. If you have multiple teams that are solving for that are working through a big product, then you may incorporate things. So I think it's again, no pun intended on the word, but it's scalable. Take what you want from the framework that helps you get to the right place. But there's the Scrum component, there's the Kanban component with regards to that, and you only adopt the things that you need to adopt. You don't bring any further complexity to your system when you don't need it. If you have one working awesome good team, then you just use the team piece to really drive what you're trying to achieve as a team. So I think at the end of the day, I think people make it complex because they adopt things in SAFe that don't necessarily apply to them, and that's just based on experience, right? So if you have good coaches, or you have good people that really have experience in that, they understand what to adopt and how to customize it to the organization to better support the outcomes that the organization is trying to achieve.
So I'd like to jump to the question here.
Absolutely.
Full question. I'd like to know, right? Because Ro, you and I experienced this before. On the folks that are on the call, how many of you have seen conflict? Like, we've hopefully given you, I don't want to say too different. They're I'd like to think they're complementary. Product management as a culture, as a way of thinking, scaled agile framework as a framework coming in your organization. Do you guys see any conflict between the two within your organization today? I know there are many that have implemented SAFe and that are also going through a product transformation. I'm curious to see if there is a conflict there. There's a great question from Ashke while we're waiting for the poll. Why does SAFE have product owner and product manager as two different roles? So Ashke, I'll answer this. That's not SAFE. That's product management. So depending on the size of your organization, and it gets less about the title and about the accountability. Somebody needs to be accountable to the strategy. Someone needs to be forward thinking, identifying 6, 12, 18 months from now. Someone needs to be on the execution who takes those problems to be solved and begins to execute it. Typically, we break that out into a product manager and product owner. That's not just a SAFE thing. That's a product management concept in general. So again, less about the title and more about someone needs to be strategic and long-term thinking, and someone needs to be tactical. Because the challenge is, if you try to do both and you're not really good at time management, one of them is going to suffer. Either you're going to be really good at execution and then really be really bad at in the future of developing products that are meaningful, or you're going to be really horrible at execution, right? There's a compromise there. All right, so let's go ahead and end the poll. See here, let's share the results, Jerry. So half, which is interesting, guys. All right, Eli, I'm interested in your perspective. Almost half, over half of our folks that answered this question said there are noticeable conflicts. Are you surprised by this?
Not at all.
Let's stop sharing it, Jerry. Why are you not surprised?
Well, I think eventually, when I think in general, when there are conflicting or competing frameworks in an organization, it just confuses people, and it starts creating, rightly or wrongly, it starts creating camps, and I've seen that in many organizations, that you end up having, you know, like the SAFE folks and the product folks. And again, I'm not saying any of this is right or wrong. I'm not portraying a view that says, like, you know, there is an inherent conflict between the two frameworks or the two approaches. I'm just saying, in essence, what happens in reality, and I think, you know, the poll, again, as a, you know, as a small sample size, but it gives a sense that you see that a lot of companies struggle and end up like having two camps, one with more of the SAFE approach. And again, if you ask me my honest opinion, I think a lot of it, and I've spoken about this in previous interactions, is to do with SAFE ending up being implemented as a set of methodologies and ceremonies instead of the actual, you know, the heart of the framework. And I think in a lot of cases, it just becomes more of a ceremonial framework than anything else. And I'm not saying that's what SAFE should be. I'm just saying that's how I see sometimes SAFE being implemented or absorbed by organizations. And if I can, so that's like my thoughts about, you know, the poll. If I can just jump on one thing about product manager versus product owner,
please,
if you don't mind. My personal view is that I don't think this is not set in stone. Some companies, by the way, some of the most modern companies in the world don't have the role of product manager.
I think it's
owners.
What is it?
Many. Google won't have it. Netflix won't have it. Microsoft
Airbnb.
won't have it. They won't have the role of a product owner. It doesn't exist. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying, and Joe, I mean, your definition is, you know, as good as any in terms of like the split of like responsibility, like tactical versus strategic. I sometimes hear the like owner of the problem versus owner of the solution. You know, you can kind of think of like the delineation between the two roles. All I can say is that product management as a profession is still a vibrant and evolving thing. And as part of that, I can tell you, for example, Microsoft recently changed their like split out from their product management program management. And so they're introducing now program managers who are, you know, in essence, something like a product owner, but with a different title. And so what I think this does say is that everybody acknowledges that the role of product manager in its entirety is probably too much for one person. Like, you know what I mean? There's too many things you're supposed to do as a product manager to be able to just take care of everything, especially in a large organization, in a large setup. So that's kind of my 2 cents about the PM versus PO debate, which is a big debate, by the way, in many companies. So
yeah, if I can Ro, I want to hand the baton to you for just give me 1 second though, okay? Where I see we can get this resolved, and we're going to talk about alignment and all this kind of stuff and where there's conflict. If you're in an organization where there is this perceived conflict, I would encourage the product manager that's seeing it or experiencing it. I'd ask you, okay, what have you done to reach out and extend the olive branch to your safe coach, right? Ro, I hope you don't mind, but Ro and I worked together a few years ago, and the reality is her and I have very similar beliefs in terms of the role of the customer, right? You're not going to be successful unless you understand the role of the customer, or understand the needs of the customer. And I think what it comes down to is, this is where tools like team working agreements, Racy Daisy, okay, how can we divide and conquer? If we're all aligned on how can we best deliver value to our customer, then it should be something that should be collaborative with the two organizations. And I feel like, and I think Ro, you would agree with me on this. I want to know your opinion. It's like egos get in the way. Egos. I want to be the superhero. I want to be the person that everyone says he or she fixed this situation, versus we're working together. Because anyone that's ever taken a class with me knows my mantra is great products come from great teams, right? I mean, Ro, how would you add on to that? I'm just looking for your perspective.
I think at the end of the day, it's really about the team work and really thinking about how we organize ourselves around the value that we're delivering to our customer and putting the customer in the center of everything. So when we talk about, as rigid and as rudimentary as writing really key stories, or talking about writing features, or talking about writing things that we're going to do from objective like OKRs and KPIs, we really have to be thoughtful around who we're going to do that for. And that's the success patterns that I see. And I've been fortunate to work in transformations where I've had just IT leading the transformation, but then I've had also where, as a change catalyst, as a change agent, as an SPC in their organization, is that I have asked, I've brought in business and IT coming together to support that work. But it all begins with teams, and it begins with the clarity around what their purpose and their role to achieve that customer need is.
Yeah. So there's a good question in here from Marcia. If you could address the benefits for a company that was initially waterfall, then implemented agile, would it be the benefit to now move to safe rather than using the Scrum Agile framework? That's a meaty question. So if you could address the benefits for a company that was initially waterfall, then implemented agile, what would be the benefit to now move to safe rather than use agile Scrum framework?
That is a fully loaded question, Marcia. But I love your energy around that. So I think at the end of the day, right, again, regardless of what you use, there's so many different frameworks that are out there. To me, the rudimentary of everything is really understanding where your organization is currently. Why do you want to move from waterfall over to any kind of agile ways of working? Take all the said frameworks that you have, and then really understanding the why for the change, and making sure that the leadership really is bought into that change and is leading that change. And I think somebody said that there's always the tension between change and transformation up above in one of the things. But I'd like to either introduce the question more so around, why do we want to move from a waterfall organization? There's got to be a why. For lack of a better, I hate using the word the burning platform, because it's not that. Nothing's burning, so calm down. But it's really, why do we need to change? And then building from that is what works best for our organization in order to achieve the outcomes that we want to achieve for again, I'm going to say it again, for our customers and for our employees. Because when you put those things together, that's what the core competencies for Scaled Agile are, is building everything around our customer and our employees' experience, and making sure that we're being thoughtful around scaling when we need to scale, but only scale when it's because we need to in an organization. So when I worked at IBM, we were 450,000 people globally. So we couldn't use a Scrum framework. It didn't work, right? So that's one of the things that that were lessons learned initially very, very early on at IBM. So what could they use to really scale that at a higher level, incorporating the lean component or the black belt lean optimization work that we did alongside Agile?
Yeah.
And Marcia, happy to, so offline, happy to have some really good engaging conversations. You have my information here, but happy to whatever you need.
Elad, how about you? Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, Scrum, I mean, I think SAFe and other, by the way, other frameworks were invented to say, hey, Scrum is this great framework for a team. How does this look when you scale it? You know, and I think that's like, you know, I think that was the origin. You know, it of course, you know, it ended up having its own journey with its own evolution, but the journey started with that, like saying, hey, this probably doesn't scale very well, you know, and then you have things like Spotify, and then you have like things like, you know, in SAFe, and you have like, so you have these methodologies and frameworks evolved around that notion that actually Scrum is too small as a methodology and doesn't encompass the whole needs of a large organization. And by the way, I think in that context, while SAFe can be implemented in smaller organizations, I think it's much, and Ro, keep me honest on there, of course, I think it's much more common in larger organizations as a framework. And so I think it leans towards like saying, hey, we have quite a lot of, you know, Scrum teams or Agile teams. How do we, you know, manage this entire thing?
Yeah, I think it depends. So I've done consulting for small startup companies with people less than 100 or 200 that have a safe ways of, you know, that have scaled Agile in their organization. It works quite well. But again, it's adopting the right things. So not scaling it, right, as you said. So if you have 2 or 3 teams, 4 teams, you have a team of teams less than 125 people, you can do that quite nicely without the overhead. But take the things that you want to do. So incorporate KPIs as you need to really understand what's your key performance that you're trying to drive towards. Take the OKRs, you know, what are objectives that we're trying to achieve? So I think it just depends, but it really, you know, depends on what you adopt and what you need.
Yep. All right. So I got time for one more question, Ro, and then we'll wrap up here. What challenges have you experienced implementing SAFe? What if you could boil it down, three of the bullets? You know, I know you talked about change management. A lack of change management is probably one of the biggest
Number
ones,
one,
right? Yeah.
Number one. Number two, lack of role clarity and responsibilities in the organization.
Yeah.
Not so much, and I just want to be very, very blunt in saying that, not the roles that Scaled Agile or any kind of framework or Agile introduces, but the overall current set of roles in an organization. HR has not modernized the way they should have in the evolution, in the journey of the digital age that we are in. So the clarity around roles and responsibilities and how the skills of Agile in every role that we do in an organization is essential to the success of any kind of Agile transformation. So I'm going to say that again, because it's not just Agile roles, but it's the skills around Agile components from a VP to CIO to a CDO. It's the skills around what does it mean to be an Agile leader. And then, yes, the roles around product, like I think we had a lot of questions around product owners, product managers, team coaches, scrum masters, all those things, making sure there's a clarity around the roles and a clarity around the career development of those roles. So people feel included and change is not being done to them, but they're part of the change and we're communicating. And communication, number 3. Number 3, lack of clarity in communication and continuous communication. So just when you think you've just started to communicate, you start all over and communicate. And that's where OCM and Agile come together as one unified organization alongside HR to really then drive that continuous change and evolution in the career path. How we incent people is another wonderful key topic that we could go on for hours around, all those things. So it's all up to me. Those are my key things that I would say: change, clarity, and roles and responsibilities, Agile skill sets, and then modernizing the way we think about incenting our people so they're incented to work as a team and not as an individual contributor.
Yeah, you'd be shocked, everyone on this call, that those are the same challenges that product transformations fail as well. It's the same thing, right? If we don't have clarity on the why, what happens if we don't change? what's happening today, getting clarity. Like whenever I go in and I do coaching or consulting, it's the same. Role clarity. These are all things that get in the way of transformation. You just got to understand why. We got to remember to put the customer at the center. And by the way, that customer can be somebody internal. It doesn't have to be somebody that actually pays for your service or pays for something. Anybody that consumes value from something you build is a customer. So, Elad, as I wrap up, any more thoughts from your perspective?
Well, I have many thoughts. That's a very problematic question to ask me. But I think if I had to again, looking down at this whole discussion, which I think was very interesting. At the end of the day, I think a lot of cases, enterprises, and specifically large enterprises, adopt things without giving it enough thought as to what do they need, what are they trying to achieve with this change, etc. And as a result of that, we end up with a lot of mess in large organization and a lot of conflicting views about that. And again, and this is my I'm holding to my guns on that one. I do think that SAFEs can bring with itself quite a lot of terminology and ceremonies to the level that it could be like quite overpowering for some organizations to adhere. Again, not saying that it should be the case, not saying that they couldn't adopt like a smaller person or incrementally, etc. But when it does, it becomes, a lot of people just get confused about it. And so I think that creates a lot of tension.
Right. So thanks, Elad. I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, go for it.
So the topic on product manager versus product owner, I'm sharing with you guys an offer. We have our optimal product management class, our agile product management class. That's a topic we do a deep dive into. So when we talk about the fundamentals of product management, if anyone's interested on this call, we have a special offer for $500 off. We also have a product persona pack, like our toolkit. So I'm giving you guys the QR code for that. And then for craft.io, we have 20% off plans. And guess what? If you want to see me in person or virtually, you still can. So anyone that wants to come to Milwaukee next week, I am doing some training on optimal product management. I'll also be doing some training in the spring. Come check us out at the 280group.com. Please feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. We will get to some of these other questions in a follow-up blog post or video, so I apologize I couldn't get to it. Ashke, I'll answer your question. Who won? We both won. We both win. Because it's not about us being right or wrong. It's about delivering what's best for the customer.
Everybody wins.
That's right. Hey, guys, Ro and Elad, thank you so much. You guys killed it today. I apologize if we talked over each other for a little bit. I think that's just the passion that each of us has in our general area. So thank you. You guys all rock. I'm so grateful. And everyone on the call, have a safe and wonderful holiday. Be safe wherever you are. If you're traveling, enjoy time with your family. And let's have a happy new year and start off the year on a really great note.